This is Michael Moore, and this is Rumble. Our guest today is Congresswoman Jackie Speier of the 14th District of California, or Stephen Colbert would say, the fighting 14th, up there in the San Francisco area. And she has been, since she got into Congress in 2013, has been leading the charge to finally get the Equal Rights Amendment ratified. This is the Equal Rights Amendment that started back, she's going to give us a little of the history of this, but started back in the 60s or 70s. And this is basically essentially to put women in the Constitution. The part about all men are created equal. We're not going to change, I think, that line, but basically it's women obviously were left out, as were many people. And this has been an effort to change that. Now, last February, Congresswoman Speier got the House to pass a resolution that would have removed this arbitrary timeline that got placed on. She'll explain that, to ratify the E.R.A. And then that came on the heels of getting, finally, you got to get 38 states to put an amendment into the Constitution. State 38, I think 37 was Nevada, 38 was Virginia. And then boom, we had the number of states we need to have an equal rights amendment to the Constitution. But hold up, folks. There seems to be a party, I'm not going to say which one, there seems to be one of the two parties that doesn't like this idea of women having equal rights. So, of course, the Mitch McConnell Senate last year did not pass Representative Speier's resolution. Now, here we are on the day, and actually on the day after Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were inaugurated, Congresswoman Speier, along with Republican Congressman Tom Reed of New York, reintroduced this bill in the House, while Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Democratic Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland have done so in the Senate. There's your bipartisanship, folks, right there. And so anyways, I have not given up on this. I have been an advocate. I marched in the streets when I was a teenager for this back in Michigan. We had a Republican governor, and I remember the First Lady, Helen Milliken of Michigan, Republicans. She became the co-chair of the Michigan effort to get the E.R.A. passed, and Michigan passed it back then. So this has been a Democratic and a Republican thing because, and let's just be honest, folks. I mean, not that I do want to give Republicans credit, but I'm just in that kind of month where I'm not really in that generous of a spirit, but Republicans have supported this in the past, and they got the memo that the majority of the American public is female. If you're a politician, you might want to pay attention to that singular fact. Joining me now to discuss the history of the E.R.A. and how we, you and I, the hundreds of thousands of you listening to me today, can make 2021 the year that we finally make the E.R.A. happen and put it in our Constitution. Please welcome Congresswoman Jackie Speier.
Michael, how great to be with you. Thank you so much. You did a great job, but a couple of corrections.
Yes, please. Yeah, I wanted you to give the history of this.
It started back in 1923.
Oh my God, not the 60s.
So 98 years into this campaign. It started with Alice Paul in 1923,
right,
introducing the E.R.A. It then was introduced in every Congress after that. And then in 1972, it passed both houses. And in short order, 35 states actually ratified it. It was a bipartisan bill. Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford,
right,
Mrs. Ford, all
yes,
supporting it. And then Congress, in the 1972 version, in the preamble, there was a deadline put into passing the amendment. Some have argued, actually, some of the great constitutional scholars have argued that you can't put a deadline in it because there's nothing in the Constitution that gives you the authority to do that. But nonetheless, they put a deadline in. When 35 states had passed it and they still needed 3 more, they then extended the deadline for 3 years. So they passed another resolution to extend the deadline. What we have done in this resolution is just strike the deadline from the preamble, with the argument being, 1, you don't even have the authority to do that. And 2, the fact that you put it in the preamble and then amended it certainly gives Congress the authority to strike it. Now,
Right.
There is an amendment, the 27th Amendment, that took almost 200 years to get signed, to be ratified. And it was called the Madison Amendment. And there was an effort after it passed to repeal it. And the Supreme Court, under the argument that it was too old.
Right.
And then the Congress passed the resolution to reconfirm that
Right.
amendment was going to be added.
So let me get this straight. So if I know my political science correctly here, the 27th Amendment is in the Constitution.
That's right.
Now. Okay.
It's the one that basically says, go ahead.
Yeah. No, explain what it is. Go ahead.
That one basically says you cannot increase the salary of a member of Congress in 1 year and have it take effect. You can pass it, and then you have to stand for election before it can go into effect.
Okay, that's a good idea. So that passed, but it was introduced when James Madison, right, was president of the United States.
Right.
That was before my parents and before my grandparents. This was 200 plus years ago. And yet that amendment is in the Constitution today, even though it didn't have the tick-tock of a clock on it. So the argument seems to make common sense, but the most common sense seems to be that I got to believe any poll that I've seen of the American public when they're asked about this, it's not a 50-50
no,
thing.
Not close. It's not close.
It's not 60-40. This is like I believe, and correct me again if I'm wrong, the majority of Americans who identify as Republicans or independents or Democrats, the majority all support adding these few sentences to the United States Constitution that give women. It's just even to even say to give women the same rights as men.
Right.
It sounds like a congresswoman. I think I might have heard yesterday on TV telling us that in fact 9/11 did happen. So and they're like, wow, hey, did you know that 9/11 happened?
Yeah, you had a good epiphany over the last couple of days.
Well, can I just say, just before we jump into this too deeply, because people are wondering, Mike, why aren't you asking her about, that we are talking about 3 weeks in a row of insurrection, impeachment, inauguration. And then just before we went on here, the House and the Senate now have passed the COVID relief bill that the Biden-Harris administration put forth, and I think it's the whole thing, right? It's what Joe Biden wanted to get passed.
Oh, it's $1.9 trillion.
$1.9 trillion, and not just the dollars, the other things that are in there in terms of raising the minimum wage and all the other. You must at least
moratorium on rent.
Moratorium on rent. Yes.
Rental evictions and the $1,400 in stimulus for each person that would take it up to $2,000. Unemployment insurance continuing at $400 a week for until September 21st, I think.
And that's $400 on top of what they're getting from their state unemployment insurance. Yes, exactly. Yes.
So it is a huge stimulus. It is so desperately needed for the people in this country, and to have anyone sit back and want to, reduce it when people are literally hanging on by their fingernails. It is.
Right.
So it's going to move. We're now using the process of reconciliation, which ironically, it's been used 17 times before. Ironically, the last time it was used by then ex-President Trump, who wanted to make sure there was a $2 trillion tax cut for the wealthiest Americans. That was used. That same time was used.
Yeah, it was okay then.
Yeah, but okay. No, it's not okay.
But you got to understand that money went to very deserving people that were in desperate need of that tax cut. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out of the way because I think, it's important to let people know that as dark as of a time that it seems that we're in, and it doesn't seem to be that way, it is, when we've got almost 500,000 dead fellow Americans. But when we have these victories, we have to pause for a moment and celebrate them. And that beautiful op-ed that was in the paper, I think it was yesterday or today, from all the Obama officials saying to Democrats today in the House and Senate, don't make the mistake that we made in singing Kumbaya for 2 years. Or giving into everything on the Affordable Care Act that they're just to get their vote, and then they end up giving them any votes.
You reduce it down, and then you don't even get the vote.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of really stupid, isn't it? It shows it's almost malfeasance as an elected official to get drawn into that web.
But we've
so many times, and the president
yes.
Obama did it. He thought that he was going to be post. What did he call it? Post.
Well, I read post-racial America, but I read both of his books before he was elected. So I knew he had this thing in him that always trying to make people feel comfortable, because he was always the first black kid in the school, the first black student running the Harvard Law Review. And he saw the nervousness of white people and he didn't want them to be nervous. And, if you've read his book, this. He's a decent guy that wanted to, can't we all get along? And no, actually, we do all want to get along, but there are some people that don't want to get along. There are some people that want to put a bullet in the head of a certain speaker of the House. This has been a rough month. I mean, it's got to have been rough for you. Were you on Capitol Hill on January 6th? Were you there?
I was in the gallery.
Oh, no. Were you there with my friend from Flint? We've been friends since teenager. Dan Kildee. Yes,
we were in the gallery. Can I just tell you this, Michael?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know my history, but I was, shot.
I do know. Yes, please. Yeah, tell the Jonestown. You were there at the Jonestown massacre because you were supposed to be massacred. And but please tell the story because I remember this so clearly. You were an aide to the congressman from San Francisco, Leo Ryan. And if younger people, if you don't know, this guy named Jim Jones, cult leader, convinced close to 900 people to move down to Guyana in South America. And they set up this cult camp. And so Congressman Ryan and an NBC News crew and Congressman Ryan, were you his chief of staff or you were
legislative council?
Okay. And so you go down there to see, because these are mostly Bay Area residents.
They were young kids from his district who had gotten involved with the People's Temple in San Francisco. Their parents had come to Congressman Ryan and said, something's wrong. Now this was it started at this church of that was, biracial. It was interested in making a utopia. That's why they were creating this camp in Guyana. But then their word had come out that he was using physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse. He was taking Social Security checks from seniors. So there were a lot of African American older people that were part of the church. A lot of young white kids that got involved, and he used mind control and got them so locked into his world that they feared for themselves. So they go down to Guyana in part because there was criticism starting to build up in the Bay Area about him. He had lots of political connections. People like Willie Brown had, been with him, George Moscone, because he was able to get 2,000 of his congregation out to walk precincts, for instance.
Yeah.
So he goes down there. We get all these complaints. We're working with the State Department. State Department says, looks like everyone's really happy there. But Ryan was really someone who he was like an experiential legislator. He wanted to go down and check it out for himself. So we did. And then people wanted to leave with us. And it was, like a stick of dynamite. There was so much tension. So we had a group that we took to the airstrip. We were waiting for the second plane to arrive. And then this tractor trailer had followed behind us, unbeknownst to us, and started shooting. And they came and shot us at point blank range. Congressman was shot.
He was killed, right?
He was killed. There were a number of NBC, the reporter and the cameraman that was killed. There was a photographer from a San Francisco newspaper was killed. There was one person who was one of the members of the temple that wanted to leave that was killed. Most of the temple members
and you were shot multiple times. How many times?
5 times.
5 bullets in you. You did not die.
I still carried 2 bullets, as a matter of fact.
Oh my God.
So,
oh my God. Right. Oh my God. So on January 6th, I'm sorry, I'm just like tearing up a little bit here, that you would have to go through this again. And I know now where you were, the gallery, to the people who don't know, that's the balcony in the house. And people went up there, mainly, I think, the beginning for COVID reasons, just to have distancing. But you're trapped up there and there's no stairway down from the balcony down to the house floor. So there's no way for you guys to get out of there. There's doors up there, but the mob had made their way up there. They're trying to get in the doors.
Doors are locked. They're pounding
You and Dan and a number of others are laying flat on the floor, face to the floor. And here you are, having gone through this once before in your life. I don't want to put any words in you, but I'm just saying myself, I don't know how you survived the first shooting there in South America, but you must have thought on January 6th that you got lucky once. You're not getting lucky. You're not getting lucky again.
So they tell us get down on the floor. So I'm on the floor. I'm crouched there. All of a sudden, I hear a gun shot.
Oh, right.
And I thought, oh my God. And I laid my cheek on that cold marble and thought, I don't believe this. I am going to die in this tabernacle of democracy in my own country when I survived being shot up in the jungles of Guyana.
And then through circumstance, a chance, a miracle, whatever you want to call it, you don't die on January 6th again. You have an angry mob who they've got weapons, they've got a noose, they've got zip ties, and they had a plan, and they knew exactly where they were going. And I got to tell you, I've said this on my podcast. For 30 years, I have filmed at our United States Capitol. I have filmed in your office. I literally cannot tell you how to get to Nancy Pelosi's office.
No, you're absolutely right.
Right?
It is.
It's a maze.
Away. It's almost obscure. You can walk right past it if you didn't know where you were going.
Right. So I hope whatever investigation is taking place, we will find out the truth of how this mob, this group of domestic terrorists, were able to find their way through the Capitol building, through at least one of the office buildings. This is just, just tell me that we're going to get to the truth of this, and there will be repercussions, because if this doesn't have consequences, if this behavior doesn't have consequences, we're doomed. And I'm telling you, sorry to say this to you, you then will continue to be in danger. And I watched my good friend from Detroit, Rashida Tlaib, crying on the House floor. Anybody who wants to watch this, I'll post it on my podcast platform here. This is one tough woman, man. I've known her a long time. The oldest of, I think, 14 kids, Palestinian American family, and watching what I call the Sedition Caucus that very night give in to the terrorist demands.
2/3 of them, Michael, 2/3 of the Republicans.
2/3
after this insurrection, after this, absolute, potential demise of a democracy, voted to overturn the election in those 2 states.
Right. And then backed a woman who had a whole history, and I mean a recent history. I don't mean an old history, the way she tried to portray it. I'm talking about things that she posted this past week of these crazy, not just the crazy theories, but liking and supporting the idea of putting a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's head, taking care of the Clintons, executing these people that she calls traitors. And then they all but 11 of them back it. And then when it came to impeaching Trump, the all but 10 Republicans voted to impeach. 2 from Michigan.
If this is not an impeachable offense, nothing is an impeachable.
Man. Okay, I'm sorry we got off on this, but I'm just, the whole country is in a rage about this. And we want to wrap our arms around you and everybody there. This is our house. This is our Capitol building. We will not go through 4 years and letting Biden and Harris have to put up with this nonsense. Everybody needs to be strong and have courage. And they were offered the kumbaya moment a number of times in this last week or two, and they chose to forego it. So they've made their stand. And now my plea to you and everybody else there, the Democrats and the few Republicans with a conscience, please stand strong. This is a precarious moment for our country right now. You know this. I don't need to tell you this.
You have my word.
So back to the minor problem that women are not mentioned in the United States Constitution. So I'm laughing because the insanity of this. And I have also pointed out on my podcast before that when FDR and Truman were planning the end of World War II, and they went in, and Truman and his people, but they're all FDR people, and wrote a new constitution for the new Germany, the new Italy, and the new Japan. And they all contain some version of women are equal to. We did that for them in 1945 and 46. The fact that we still don't have this is just makes no sense.
It's embarrassment. There are 193 countries in the UN. 165 of them have this specifically in their constitution, and the United States does not.
Right.
My favorite line, I've got to share this with you. My favorite line is from the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, who said, in response to a question, certainly the Constitution does not require discrimination based on sex. The only question is, does it prohibit it? It does not.
Right. It does not. So, okay. So you've given us the history of it. And is it true what I said? The last 2 states we needed, Nevada and Virginia?
It was Nevada, Illinois, and Virginia in that order.
Nevada, Illinois. God, Illinois did not pass it back then. Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. But back then I remember as a kid, Senator Dirksen and Senator Percy, was it? Perry? Percy. Yeah, both Republicans represented Illinois. So it wasn't the Illinois that we know today. But so the last 3 states came in. You need 38 states. Check. You need the House and the Senate to pass it at the beginning. Check. That happened.
Right.
I don't know. Did the president have to sign it or not? No, I don't think that's not part of it. So what? Okay. So we should be able to get this passed in the Senate, right? Your resolution now?
Well, it's bipartisan in the Senate, like it's bipartisan in the House. Yeah. We'll have to pick up another 8 senators. We have Murkowski and Collins. And I think, there's probably 3 or 4 more that we will be able to pick up. But there's another pathway, which is 38 states have passed it. The archivist has a ministerial function of certifying it and publishing it. Now, he has not done so because last year
this is the National Archives you're talking about.
Yes, this is the
archivist.
The archivist. He requested an opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel within the Department of Justice as to whether or not he could. And they wrote a cockamamie opinion that has been laughed at by most constitutional scholars.
This is the Trump Department of Justice wrote this.
So they provided an opinion that says, no, E.R.A. is gone. It's finished. So there's another pathway, which is the president can rescind that opinion. he can notify the archivist that he should certify.
The current president, Joe Biden, can rescind it. Oh,
so that's an option as well.
Oh, that seems easier. Sorry. I'm sorry. I refuse to wait another year for this to be passed and put in and it's already passed. It should be put into the Constitution. So the rules are the archivist, National Archives, once all the states have voted, and now we've got the 38, then he writes up some piece of paper, and then that puts it officially into the Constitution.
Correct.
So our president essentially could instruct him to do that or rescind what happened under Trump.
Correct. So those are other options available to us.
Which way is it going to go? Which way are you pulling for?
Well, we would all love to just have it be certified and published, right? But, short of that, facts are facts. We have 38 states now. And one way or the other, there is no, you can't put a deadline on equality, and there should be no deadline in terms of this resolution. So, and the world has changed so dramatically too. When you realize that half of the families with children in this country have women as heads of households now.
Right. That's right.
And that 62% of pregnant women or new moms are in the workforce. This is a different world. So when you have pregnancy discrimination that continues to this very day,
right,
that's a problem.
Right.
And it makes the case for why we need the E.R.A. Once you've got the E.R.A., you don't have that, those hoops you have to jump through in order to establish the discrimination.
Trying to pass law after law after law just so that women can be equal, just so women can be paid the same as men, just so that women, et cetera, et cetera. My nieces were asking me the other night, how come it didn't pass? Like, what was the argument on the Republican side? I said, it wasn't just that. It was back then there were some Southern Democrats that were opposed to it. But I said, the argument that I remember, honestly, their big thing, it was the same thing that happened in North Carolina a few years ago with the bathroom issue. It was they kept telling Phyllis Schlafly and these the people fighting this kept telling the American public that men were going to invade women's restrooms.
Right.
Am I right on that? Is my memory correct?
It was about LGBT and it was about abortion.
Yes.
We have abortion. We've had abortion for decades. This isn't going to have any impact on that.
Right.
LGBTQ community is now enshrined in a Supreme Court decision from last year.
Yep.
And one earlier than that as it relates to marriage equality.
Right.
And we have unisex bathrooms now anyway. So, they're done that, right? And the sky hasn't fallen. But women are still treated differently than men.
Oh, yeah. And they warned us that women were going to be placed into combat if they're in the Army, which we've resolved that, and women are in combat.
And seeking to be in combat.
Yeah. So all their arguments from back then have vaporized. What would be the argument? Who's going to take it? Let's assume we're going to get this in the Constitution this year. Who's going to take that to the Supreme Court? And what argument, other than the tick-tock of the clock, which you can cite a number of amendments to the Constitution that didn't have a clock, and this, like you said, there's no clock on equality. Imagine if Lincoln had done that with slavery. Well, we're gonna get the 13th and the 14th and the 15th amendments passed, but we're gonna put a clock on it. And if we don't beat the clock, then we still have slavery. Nobody would think like that. But what is going to be the fight so we can get ready when they try to stop you?
The fight will be over abortion, and the fight will be, they will hide, I think, behind this idea that the deadline was taken out after the states passed the amendment.
And what do you think their chances are of winning with that?
I don't know. But I will say...
So you're worried then?
I would say that Antonin Scalia's statement should have a lot of credibility with our very conservative justices. Because if the argument is, women are taken care of by the 14th Amendment, by the Civil Rights Act. I mean, the truth is, women weren't contemplated in the 14th Amendment. And an originalist would know that. And an originalist would recognize that unless you have it in the Constitution, it's not there. Right? This kind of doesn't make sense. But I mean, if you don't have the 52 words that say you can't discriminate based on sex, if it's not there in the Constitution, then, as he pointed out, it's not prohibited.
Right. Okay, so as I said, there's a few 100,000 people that are going to be listening to this. What can we tell them? Because right now they're thinking, okay, Mike, Congresswoman, I'm on board. What can I do as a citizen? I had no idea that this thing just, somehow fell apart years ago when I wasn't even born yet. What can I do to help? What can I do to pitch in? Who am I calling? Where is my voice needed for it to be heard?
Call your senators. Call your senators. And make the case that I think over 70% of the population already thinks it's in the Constitution.
Yes. Yes. That's what my niece has said. Wait, what? I said, no, I know. I'm sorry. We oldsters, we tried to get this right. But
we should be.
I'm only referring to myself, of course. But okay, so yes, 70% of the American public thinks it's already in there. So call your senators and say what? And
say, support this resolution.
And what about dropping a line to the White House?
And dropping a line to the White House and to the vice president. She talked about it in her campaign. She said that's one of the ways that we can make sure that women are protected moving forward. And these cases happen over and over and again. And until it happens to you, you think that everything's okay.
Until it's not.
It's not.
No, I know. And, one thing I was saying this week too about the part about the minimum wage that's in the bill that got passed here, raising the minimum wage. The idea of, and I've said this to conservative people back in Michigan, that how would you feel if I were to tell you that the guy in cashier lane number 14, your wife is working in cashier lane 13, that guy's paid $1 more than your wife? How would you feel about that? And every time I'd go, I wouldn't like it. Yeah, of course you wouldn't, because that means he's getting $40 more a week. She should be. What would you do if you had $40 more a week? Because we now the Ledbetter Act and all, we've taken care of some of this, but we're always dancing around the edges of this.
Well, the Ledbetter Act is all about being able to share information about what you're making. It doesn't go much further than that. There's actually a case on point. In Arizona, a woman gets hired in the Department of Education. Same day, another person gets hired, a man. Same job, one's a man, one's a woman. She finds out subsequently that she's making $17,000 less a year.
Wow. In a government job.
In a government job. And
not at the Piggly Wiggly, at a government job.
Goes all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says that there is a governmental purpose in that state relied on your previous salary to base your salary in this position. So the fact that she was making less than he did in some other job was okay in now giving her a salary that was $17,000 less. Now, that's a great example of how if the E.R.A. is there, it's discrimination, pure and simple, done over race salary, right?
Right. Okay, so for those of you listening, the number to the U.S. Senate is 202-224-3121. I'll have the number on my podcast page here and a link where you can call them. And if you don't know who your senators are, it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's okay. The operator will, yes, you should know these things, but the kind operators on the Capitol Hill switchboard will just ask you which state you're from and say Pennsylvania. And then they'll say, which senator do you want first? You say, give me the Republican first. Because I think he voted for impeachment. Am I right? Yes. Toomey. So, and then come back to the switchboard and go to the other one. That's how you do it. There's a human being that will answer, and there's somebody in your senator's office who will answer. And if they're busy, there'll be a machine. Leave a message. And for the White House, they're transitioning their number. You can see if it's working today. 202-456-1111, or go on whitehouse.gov. And you can actually, there's a thing there. You can just write to the president and Congresswoman, explain to people, you guys keep track of these calls.
I get a listing at the end of every day.
Every day.
Called my office.
Mm-hmm. And why they called.
And why they, specifically what they called. Sometimes I have 3 or 4 paragraphs.
Wow.
Particularly when they want to, suggest that I should have died in Jonestown.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
So it does make a difference. They keep track of who writes to them, what emails they get, how many emails on each topic. It all makes a difference. Huge.
Right. Yeah. So don't think that you don't matter. Don't say to yourself, oh, I got these 2 horrible Republicans as senators. They want to all get reelected. And if they have a sense that there's this groundswell and it's about the majority gender, the 52% of the population that are women and girls, they are going to listen to you on this one. Do not be defeated by this. And I just think, I can't believe this has been going on since I was in high school. And as you now have told us, it's been going on since 3 years after women got the right to vote.
Right.
This fight. Right. So folks, let's us be the ones to win the fight for all the women and all the people that came before us. And men, we benefit from this. Women, when their boat goes up, our boat goes up. It benefits all of us. We're a better society if we acknowledge this equality. And who's not with me right now? I'm sorry, I only have a microphone, so I can't hear you. But any final words on this, Congresswoman? Any other thoughts or if they've got that conservative, sister-in-law, and they don't know what to say. What is that thing that you have found that when you explain this to people, they go, you're right?
Well, when you have so many women in the workforce now, they're the breadwinners.
Yeah.
And if they're not making what they deserve, it impacts their life for the rest of their lives. I mean, women end up receiving close to $1 million less in terms of retirement, based on the fact that they're only making 82 cents for every dollar earned by a man. And for Black women, it's 62 cents. And for Hispanic women, it's 54 cents. So, I mean, it's real. It's truly real. So, it's really quite simple. We deserve to be equal. And the Constitution doesn't provide that kind of protection right now.
Yeah, and how sad that you even have to say those words. We deserve to be equal. You didn't add that school shootings are real, too, by the way. On the list of obvious things, can we just put that women are equal, mm-hmm. and they deserve the protection of our United States Constitution? And I'm not being facetious about these things that I had to listen to yesterday from the Congresswoman from Georgia. But it has rattled my brain seriously, and the with the gun in front of Rashida and Ilhan and Congresswoman Presley. I guess I want to just leave this with you
We
personally.
can't normalize that, is what you're
Yes.
saying. We
Yes.
cannot normalize that. And that's
No.
what the Republicans were attempting to do, is to normalize that. And we'll all live in fear if that becomes normal.
Well, that'll be the end of getting anything done. And maybe it could be, democracy, as I've been saying, there's no guarantee of it.
Right.
And
Well, most democracies have failed.
most democracies, we've been very lucky to last this long. And we've lasted by, in some god awful ways, the genocide of our native people that at the beginning, building the country on the backs of slaves, not letting women vote. I mean, just go down. And yet somewhere, somebody up there somewhere has let us continue.
Yeah.
Sometimes by the skin of our teeth. And I don't want this to fail on our watch. Yours, mine, everybody listening to this.
Right. We owe it. We owe it to our children and their children.
Absolutely. Otherwise, what's the point, folks?
That's right.
Come on. It's, my grandmother was a suffragette.
Does she really?
Yes. Just outside of Flint, Michigan, back. And I'm talking about early, like early 1900s, late 1800s. And to her, it was just common sense, and it didn't seem fair. It just didn't seem fair.
Do you know what they endured, though? They were jailed.
Yeah.
They were sexually abused. One had had scissors put through her eyes. I mean, just to get the right to vote.
I often think that she was lucky because, Michigan, we're right on the border of a sometimes slightly more enlightened country. But she married a Canadian. And so she had a supportive husband for this. But that was way back. That was in a time where actually he was a Protestant, she was Catholic, and the local clan burned a cross on their lawn because in that town, no Protestant was to ever marry a Catholic. And so, yes, I do know from the stories I was told of what they had to, and what women had to endure, and the ridicule and the scorn, and the marriages that broke up, the women that could never get married because no man would get anywhere near that. How sad.
Can I share two quotes with you?
Yes.
One was George Bernard Shaw, who said, "If women get the rights to vote, there'll be a crushing tax on bachelors." and the other one
what's the other one?
Was from the Seneca Falls Review. And this editor wrote and said, "If women get the right to vote, they will become thin-lipped, fat-handed, and flat-chested." Those
three things all sound like heaven to me, but that's just me. Thank you so much for this fight. And thank you. We're going to do this year.
Thank you.
That's my commitment. And I know people listening to this right now are signed on and ready to do. So you and the others, the coalition, we're going to talk to Carol Jenkins. This isn't just one podcast. I'm going to stay on this until it is written in our United States Constitution. So thank you for inspiring me. And I'm going to hope for the best here.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Jackie Speier from Northern California. And to everybody listening, let's do what she's asked us to do. Contact your senators and contact Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We can make this happen. I really believe this is one we can win. So thank you very much, Congresswoman. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.